What is happening, Southern California sports fans? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. We have a lot to talk about today. Soccer-wise, LAFC wins their first game of the MLS is Back tournament quarterfinal game against the Seattle Sounders. A little bit of a revenge game for them as they dominated 4-1. Also, basketball-wise, Lakers-Clippers. They play each other tomorrow, and it's going to be a big game for both teams. Which teams will emerge victorious? Baseball-wise, the Padres, the Angels, and the Dodgers. One team did well in their opening series, one team was in their opening series, and one team was disappointing in their opening series. Also, the Los Angeles Sparks. They kicked off their season with a big victory over the Phoenix Mercury. Did they do the same thing yesterday against the Chicago Sky? We'll find out in a little bit. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome everybody to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Like I said, my name is Teran Rodriguez. Welcome to episode 4. It is a great Wednesday afternoon to be talking about some Southern California sports. We'll start off with some basketball action between the Lakers and the Clippers. These two teams concluded their exhibition play as the Lakers beat the Wizards a couple days ago. They beat them on Monday, and then the Clippers lost to the Sacramento Kings, which obviously they were shorthanded, but it's just exhibition. It's nothing to stop, drop, and roll with. So anyway, and first and foremost, gotta give a big shout to the chat room real quick. Big shout to Larry B for joining me. Definitely appreciate your support, saying I sound great. Appreciate you tuning in. So, back to Lakers-Clippers. So, this is a big-time matchup for both teams. It's kind of big. It's really huge for the Clippers, considering they need all the wins they can get if they want that number 1 seed. Because if they get the number 1 seed, they pretty much avoid the Denver Nuggets, which is pretty much got the 3rd seed locked up, for the most part. But honestly, like I've said before, I pretty much see the Western Conference Finals being boiled down to the Clippers and the Lakers. If it's not both those teams in the conference finals, then that's a disappointment, especially for my standards and for everyone's standards. So, but you also can't sleep on the Sacramento Kings. Although they're not Southern California, they're NorCal, which, I could see them possibly like getting hot when it matters most, but even if they sneak into the playoffs as the 8th seed, they'd still have to take on the Lakers. And for the most part, the Kings have been banged up. So, as for Lakers-Clippers, the Lakers are 5.5 games ahead of the Clippers going into the start of the NBA restart. The Clippers are only 1.5 games ahead of the Nuggets, and then the Nuggets are 7 games back of the Lakers. They need a miracle in order to catch the Lakers at that point. So, Lakers are pretty much inching closer to that number 1 seed. I can see them having an interesting first-round matchup. I can see Memphis being a challenge. Not too big of a challenge, but Ja Morant is good. You also have to factor in the Trailblazers with Damian Lillard and all those other talented players. And then the Pelicans are also trying to scrap into the playoffs with Zion Williamson. That would be a really cool first-round matchup, seeing Lonzo Ball and all those former Lakers that got traded to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis and all that. So I pretty much still see the Lakers coming out on top in the Western Conference. However, there is a little injury concern for them. Anthony Davis did get poked in the eye in one of the Lakers exhibition games. It wasn't on Monday. I think it was on Saturday against the Wizards. And it's not fun when you get poked in the eye because that kind of affects your eyesight. And obviously it affects your eyesight, but it affects your vision and your usage of your eye. So it's really a pain and it hurts. So unfortunately, it's speculating that Anthony Davis might be fine. Today in practice, he was seen without goggles or glasses. But if he does wear goggles, he could be Anthony Jabbar Davis. In other words, he'd be the next Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Okay, it wasn't that funny, but still. I mean, he is a big man, and he kind of would have the good fit. So we'll see how it goes for Anthony Davis. I really hope this eye injury isn't too big of a deal. It's bad enough they lost Rondo to injury, and it's also bad that Avery Bradley opted out as well. So the last thing they need is another bite in the butt courtesy of the injury bug. So we'll see how it goes for the Lakers. That's kind of the thing. Is like if they stay healthy, they're pretty much a force to be reckoned with. The reason why they had hardly any success was because a lot of their key players kept getting injured, especially LeBron. So they're going to need to stay healthy as possible. They will get Rondo back by the playoffs, at least until the quarterfinals, which I pretty much expect them to get out of the first round. And if they don't, then that's pretty embarrassing. So I think the Lakers will be fine. Obviously, losing Avery Bradley hurts, and Rondo going down with injury, that he's a fiery, feisty leader when it comes to him being on the court. But I think the Lakers will be fine for the most part. They'd have to have a major collapse in order to not win, to not be the number one seed. Because you look at the Lakers' schedule, they face the Clippers. That's obviously a tough matchup. Then after that, on Saturday, they played the Toronto Raptors. That's another tough matchup. And then on Monday, they play the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are obviously trying to improve their seeding as well, and they could see the Lakers in the quarterfinals should they get out of the first round against the Oklahoma City Thunder, if they play them. Obviously, the Houston Rockets are on their coattails as well of both of those teams. And then, speaking of the Thunder, the Lakers also play the Thunder next Wednesday. And ironically, after that, the Lakers play the Rockets next Thursday. And then, so on and so forth. They play the Pacers, then the Nuggets, and then the Kings. So, honestly, I think the Lakers have the toughest NBA restart schedule because all their matchups are challenging, including the Sacramento Kings, because obviously, the Lakers are going to rest most of their starters before playoff time, and the Kings are definitely going to want to take their best shot at the Lakers, especially if they're on the verge of making the playoffs, and that could be their make or break point in the last game of the season. So all of the Lakers matchups are very challenging, so there's not going to be an easy night for the Lakers. However, the challenging the road, the more rewarding the victory is, and especially when they get that number one seed, they won't have to play the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic. I said Luka Doncic a few episodes back, but I got the two mixed up, which is my bad. It's Nikola Jokic, so that's definitely going to be a good thing if the Lakers don't see the Nuggets. Obviously, I don't think the Nuggets are like the dark horse, but you never know with those guys. They're slightly underrated. Like, I don't think I'd pick them to win the NBA championship. They're probably the third banana of the banana tree. So I still think the Lakers and Clippers are the top two in the Western Conference. Speaking of the Clippers have had a bit of a roller coaster week in terms of their players like being in the news. Obviously, they have had the whole Lou Williams incident where he left the bubble to go to his I think his grandpa's funeral, and obviously my condolences to Lou Williams and his loved one. May he rest in everlasting peace. But that's not all that he did. He obviously Lou Williams obviously left the bubble to go to Atlanta and to attend his grandpa's wedding. But not only that, Lou Williams decided to go to his restaurant, Magic City, and pick up some chicken wings. My man, Lou Williams, went to Magic City and picked up some chicken wings. Now, obviously, you're putting yourself at risk, but because why do you have to walk in the restaurant when you could, without a mask? I don't know. Without a mask, most likely, but why would you get out of your car, walk in the restaurant, put yourself at risk to get COVID-19, and then pretty much risk not being able to help out your team and risk your health as well? So when you could just have the wings just delivered to your car, or just order takeout or something like that without leaving your car, just order or just call in the order, because I'm pretty sure he owns Magic City. So I don't know what Lou Williams is doing. Obviously, this isn't too big of a deal. Otherwise, the NBA would have cracked down on him. Like, he obviously went to go to his grandpa's funeral, but you don't want to do that, man. Like, come on, Lou Will. He's basically quarantined for 10 days, and he's going to miss the first 2 games. But honestly, it's the way the Clippers are. Like, they're hanging by a needle and a thread when it comes to that 2 seed over the Nuggets. After the Clippers play the Lakers, they play the Pelicans on Saturday, which that's an interesting matchup. I think the Clippers can win that one, but you look at the Pelicans and they're trying to scrap their way into the playoffs. Zion Williamson is going to be focused. He's really going to be focused, as well as all of the other Pelicans players, because they're thinking, we got ourselves a chance to make the playoffs. So after that, the Clippers play the Suns. Suns also have a chance to make the playoffs. However, I don't see them making the playoffs. Like, no offense to the Phoenix Suns, but they're just not there yet. They're just not there, and I don't think they can make it. So, sorry, Suns fans. Maybe next year. So, that Clippers-Suns game is going to be on next Tuesday, and then next Thursday, the Clippers play the Mavericks, which is going to be a great matchup, especially when they play Luka Doncic. And Dallas, to me, is kind of a dark horse, an underrated team. I don't think they could win the championship, but they're on their way, especially when they have also got Kristaps Porzingis, and I don't know, and they could see the Mavericks could see the Clippers in the first round of the playoffs, which that would be a fascinating matchup, considering the Mavericks did play well in their exhibition game against the Lakers, honestly. So I definitely see Porzingis and Doncic just looking good for the Mavericks. So the Clippers may have their hands full, but they will get Lou Williams back. They'll get him back in no time flat. I mean, he'll only miss the games against the Lakers and the Pelicans. So that's a thing right there. And then continuing on with the Clippers schedule, they play the Trailblazers next Saturday. That's an early game, and that's basically a 1 p.m. Eastern game, a 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time game. All these games are going to be played in Orlando. There's not going to be any home field advantage or whatnot. It's going to be played in the bubble, so unless they're playing the Orlando Magic, which it doesn't even matter. I just don't see the there's not gonna home court advantage isn't gonna matter at all. So back to the Clippers Trailblazers matchup. That's gonna be a really good game, especially since the Trailblazers are also they're starting to gain steam as well, especially with Damian Lillard and whatnot. And that man and then Portland also has some other key players such as Hassan Whiteside. And it all depends on if all the Clippers players return. Obviously, Lou Williams will be back, but Montrezl Harrell is day-to-day with his family emergency, and then Patrick Beverley is also left the bubble as well. So it all depends on when their family situations will be back. I'm pretty sure they'll be back. Those two might be back before when they play the Lakers. So we'll see how it goes. And big shout out to Davidson Crooks. He's in the chat room. Appreciate you tuning in, man. I'm actually talking some NBA talk, so if you want to chime in with anything, feel free to do so. Davidson Crooks and his partner Dentarius Luck do an excellent job with their show Fast Break, which airs Sundays at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. So definitely go check that out. So as for the Clippers' remaining schedule, after the Trailblazers, the Clippers play the Nets next Sunday, which, I don't know. I don't think the Clippers will struggle too much with the Nets. If they do, then I'll be stunned, because the Nets are also an on-the-bubble team to make the playoffs, but I just don't, without KD, I just don't think the Nets have it in them. So then another big matchup for the Clippers is against the Nuggets, where they'll get to face Nikola Jokic. So I'm really going to be fascinated to see how that turns out, because that could make or break which team is the number 2 seed and which team is the number 3 seed. I pretty much can see the Clippers and the Nuggets facing one another, because the Clippers are going to need a lot in order to catch up to the Lakers. Like I said, they're 5.5 back of the Lakers. Lakers just need to win like a couple games, and especially if they beat the Clippers on Thursday, which is tomorrow, that'll just make the Lakers' path to being the number 1 seed a whole lot easier. So that Clippers-Nuggets game is really going to be a good one. Davidson said in the chat room, the Clippers have guard issues for the short term. I agree. I think the Clippers are going to struggle a little bit when it comes to this whole NBA restart. But I think when it comes postseason time, they might be. I feel they'll be more ready, especially when it comes to Kawhi. Kawhi is more times than not always in his zone when it comes playoff time. Like, he's pretty much the load management ambassador, second only to Dennis Rodman. So, yeah, I said it. Kawhi Leonard is a load management ambassador. He was the second person to make load management memorable and useful. So that's my spiel.
He's right there.
So, yeah, I definitely think Kawhi will be on his A game when it comes playoff time. But as for the regular season, the Clippers are definitely going to struggle to start out, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see. So the Clippers close out the season against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's also going to be a huge game for the Thunder. The Thunder have obviously clinched their playoff spot, but the Thunder obviously don't want to be on the path of the Lakers. They're currently number 5, so I don't know. I don't think the Thunder can jump to number 3. They are only 2.5 back of the Nuggets, but they're going to need to win a lot of games, and they've somewhat been the surprise team of the year along with the Toronto Raptors, because you would think with losing Westbrook and having a whole bunch of roster turnover and Paul George, you would think the Thunder wouldn't even be in contention for the playoffs. But look at them now. They're in the playoffs. They're the 5 seed. They could give the Lakers a little trouble, but honestly, I don't see the Clippers, or not the Clippers, the Thunder pretty much winning the championship. So we'll see how it goes. But again, I still think it's going to boil down to the Clippers and Lakers. If it's not Clippers-Lakers in the conference finals, then I'll be disappointed for the most part. So as for tomorrow's matchup between the Lakers and the Clippers, I definitely got to go with the Lakers. I definitely think the Lakers are going to get this. They're going to get this dub, and that dub is going to taste more delicious than chicken wings at Magic City. I had to bring back the Kawhi laugh. Unfortunately, I don't see how the Lakers mess this one up. Unless Anthony Davis doesn't play, I see the Lakers winning. I think LeBron is going to come highly motivated, and I think the Lakers have depth. Although they don't have Rondo and Avery Bradley, and AD is kind of questionable with that eye injury, LeBron's going to be ready. JaVale McGee looks good. J.R. Smith is back to his basketball self. Kyle Kuzma looks pretty solid. Dwight Howard is starting to regain his momentum, even though he was thinking that he wasn't going to be playing in the NBA restart. So overall, I gotta give it up for the Lakers. I gotta pick the Lakers to win tomorrow's matchup. Nothing against the Clippers. They do have talent. They definitely have talent, and they definitely are the deeper roster. But I just think with the Clippers being surrounded in this whole news whirlpool, I just think the Lakers will just have a clearer mind than the Clippers. I think the only one that has a clear mind on the Clippers when it comes to the whole news whirlpool is Kawhi. I mean, nothing really affects him, and he's basically said in a press conference that the Clippers are focused on getting wins and whatnot, and making sure they don't like accumulate too many losses, because they obviously want that number one seed. Because again, I still think it'd be wise to avoid the Denver Nuggets, because you never know with Nikola Jokic. So we'll see how it goes for both of them. But I'm picking the Lakers to win tomorrow's matchup between Lakers-Clippers. I think LeBron's going to have himself a big game. He has emerged from the cryogenic chamber, and I think the Lakers have shaken off the rust for the most part. I think their loss to Dallas kind of woke them up. And then, I mean, nothing. I obviously don't think the Wizards are anything to write home about. Being the Wizards in exhibition or in regular season isn't anything to write home about. As well as I mean, it's certainly nowhere near as good as beating the Mavericks. But to me, I think the Lakers are I think they're just going to be better prepared. Frank Vogel's done an excellent job. I think he could be a possible Coach of the Year candidate. I definitely think he can. Like, everyone criticized him for what he was going to do with the Lakers, but he's definitely turned out to be a great asset when it comes to being the Lakers coach. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm picking the Lakers. And I'm hoping all of Clipper Nation doesn't come bash me. So, but that's my little spiel on the NBA. Let's shift on over to the WNBA, where the Los Angeles Sparks kicked off their season, and they pretty much sent the Phoenix Mercury back to orbit. See what I did there? I messed that one up, but it's you get what I mean. The Los Angeles Sparks pretty much spanked the Phoenix Mercury in their WNBA season opener on Saturday. It was a 20-point win, and I wasn't overly surprised, even though the Phoenix Mercury have Diana Taurasi. Augustus and Ogwumike really performed well, especially in the third quarter. The third quarter was what really blew the game open, where the Sparks outscored the Mercury 30-8. Woo! That's crazy. Like, the first half was close. Like, it was only a 4-point game, and the two it looked like the two teams were gonna be neck and neck until the Sparks just blew it wide open. So tough luck for the Mercury, but the Sparks definitely sparked it up against the Phoenix Mercury, and that wasn't even funny. So anyway, while the Sparks did dominate that matchup, they looked completely flat against the Chicago Sky. I kind of was surprised, but I kind of knew that Chicago was good, especially when they beat the Las Vegas Aces. I wasn't expecting the Chicago Sky to win by 18, though. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. Again, it was a close game for the most part well, not really a close game. Like, the Sparks trailed by 4 at halftime. But, to me, the second half was what doomed them. So, pretty much the Sparks are a Dr. Jekyll and Miss Hyde when it comes to second half games. Sometimes they'll be on their A game in the second half, and sometimes they won't. It's only their second game of the season, so I can't really bash the Sparks too much. Their next game is Thursday against the Connecticut Sun, which is going to be an ESPN game. It starts at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern, so sorry for those that are watching in Connecticut. So, yeah. I could see the Sparks beating the Connecticut Sun, but it's too early to tell if the Connecticut Sun are just bad overall or if they're just off to a rocky start. The next matchup after that is going to be a big one for the Sparks. On Saturday, they play the Seattle Storm. Now, that is going to be a challenging matchup. That could pretty much be a early playoff preview. So, I'm definitely looking forward to the Sparks taking on the Storm. One WNBA team I was surprised that really performed well was the Washington Mystics. They're 2-0 despite coming off of a championship and a long layoff and not having Elena Deladon with what she's been going on, with what's been happening with her. So I'm really excited to see what the Washington Mystics have to offer. And the Mystics and the Sparks play on Thursday, August 13th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. But that's looking way too far ahead. Like, the Sparks just need to get through the Connecticut Sun and the Seattle Storm, which I think they can against Connecticut. I'm not so sure about the Storm. The Storm is going to be another beast, and honestly, it's going to be tough. So we'll see how it goes for the Sparks. I mean, we'll see. It'll be an exciting. I think it'll be an exciting matchup. And Candace Parker's obviously doing her thing when it comes to the boards. Chelsea Gray's done an excellent job when it comes to assists, and I'm definitely going to butcher her name. Ninika Ogwumike is leading the way for the Sparks in terms of points per game with 17 points. So overall, I definitely think the Sparks can make a deep run for the playoffs. So they're obviously one of the more perennial playoff teams. And last year they fell just short. They lost in the semifinals to, I think it was the Washington. Was it the Mystics? I believe it was the Washington Mystics they lost to last year. So it was either the Mystics or the Aces. It was because of that stupid. It was because of the stupid playoff format. And big shout to Mr. BS3 Radio himself, Ben Suttereth III. Says sup Teran, and he's saying what's up to the chat room. Great having you tune in. Definitely check out BS3 Radio. Ben Suttereth and all of the other podcasters definitely make great content. Definitely check out Ben's live stream that goes on every Monday at around 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then he also has the weekend wrap-up show, which starts approximately at 10 p.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And I think that's also noon Central time. So definitely do check out BS3 Radio. and great to have you in the chat room, buddy. And thanks for all your support for IE Sports Radio as well. So anyway, back to the WNBA. I think the Sparks should at least get a split this week. If they go 2-0, awesome. If they go 0-2, then I don't know what to say. Like, if they lose to a winless Connecticut Sun team, which I don't think they will, I don't know. And Ben says he never starts on time. It's alright though, Ben. I mean, it happens. Things happen. So that's pretty much going to be my little take on the WNBA as well. It's only 2 games into the season, and I agree with Ben Suttereth. He says, great to see the WNBA back. I couldn't agree more. Like I said last week, I want to know if all of y'all are going to be tuning into the WNBA. I definitely will be tuning into the WNBA, especially with all of sports returning. And I'm an avid Sparks fan. Like, the Sparks are pretty much the team. I've pretty much been a Sparks fan lifer, so that's who I'm pretty much keeping my eye on, especially with this show. But definitely don't sleep on the Mystics, and definitely don't sleep on the Chicago Sky. Like, I still couldn't believe the Chicago Sky beat the Los Angeles Sparks by 18. Like, that's pretty shocking. Looking at the stats, the Chicago Sky really shot the ball well from the field. 54% from the field and 44% from three-point land. And free throws were pretty much neck and neck. Rebounds, the Chicago Sky occupied that category 38-30. Steals, the Sparks actually occupied that category. Turnovers were pretty even. So overall, when it came down to scoring, pretty much the sky was the limit for Chicago, honestly. And yes, I had to use another bad pun.
Natalie.
Get used to me doing that. So anyway. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the WNBA/NBA portion. Ben does make a great point with the NBA/WNBA have it figured out with the bubble format. I agree. I honestly agree. I think the two have it figured out, and what I'm not too happy with when it comes to the WNBA is the new playoff format. I don't really like the new playoff format where it doesn't mean where not having an Eastern Conference and not having a Western Conference is there. That doesn't matter. It's just basically going to be seeded on number of wins, basically the win-loss record. So, to me, what's the point of having a Western Conference and an Eastern Conference? There should be none of that Eastern or Western Conference. It should just be one whole bracket. Like, yeah, I have the Kawhi laugh track. I've got that going, especially with the Lakers-Clippers matchup going. So, anyway, I just don't see a point to having the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference in the WNBA. If they're gonna roll with that format, then if they're gonna roll with the current format that they have, where Western and Eastern Conference don't matter, there's no point of having a Western or Eastern Conference in the regular season. So that's just my take. If all of you disagree or agree, just let me know in the chat room or just let me know on Twitter. I don't dodge anyone. I don't block or I don't work around anyone. But to me, I don't like the new playoff format for the WNBA. It's like, what is the point of having the Western and Eastern Conference when it's not going to be in the playoffs? Like, what's the point? Like, you might as well, even if you win the conference, you're basically not guaranteed to have home court advantage throughout a majority of the playoffs. So that's just me. However, maybe I'm just whining because I'm a Sparks fan, but either way, it is what it is. So we're actually going to take ourselves a quick little break. When we come back, I'm going to be talking some baseball, going to be talking some MLS action with LAFC. Going to be talking some Big West Conference. They had some news coming out today as well. So you're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Lay down music,
Hey, what's up, BS3 sports fans? If you love listening to the BS3 Sports Show, check out the weekend wrap-up every Monday at 12:15 Central Time, 1:15 Eastern, recapping the weekend in sports like you never heard it before. Comedy, interactive chat room, it's a must-listen. Weekend wrap-up on Spreaker.com, part of the X Squad. Check it out. You won't be disappointed.
Attention, all sports fans! If you're someone who wakes up each morning with lists of sporting events to go along with your to-do list for the day, then you just might be a diehard. The world of sports is as vast as the ocean is deep, including the major leagues, the minor leagues, the college, and everything in between. This is me, your boy Larry B of IE Sports Radio, welcoming you to join me every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on The Defining Moment, a show that focuses on what really matters in the sports world, sports themselves, and nothing outside of them. Once again, tune in for The Defining Moment with me, your boy Larry B, every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on IE Sports Radio, right here on Spreaker.com. We'll see you there.
And we're back with the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. It is me, Teran Rodriguez, definitely encouraging you to check out all those shows on IE Sports Radio, and definitely check out BS3 Radio, like I said. Definitely check out the Weekend Wrap-Up Show. It'll knock your socks off. And definitely check out The Defining Moment with Larry B. I'll be a little honest, I like that old little intro. It really just gets me hyped. Just a little guilty pleasure on my part, so don't mind me. So anyway, we're actually going to jump back into some Southern California action as we're going to talk some MLS. Yes, I threw you all a curveball. Y'all thought I was going to talk baseball, but I'm going to talk some MLS action. So LAFC is the only SoCal team that remains in the MLS's back tournament. So obviously, the Galaxy wet the bed, and they couldn't even win one game. Their last game of the year was against the Houston Dynamo. They tied 1-1. I guess it was a good way for them to go out, but still, they went out with a whimper and not a bang. So, tough luck for the Galaxy. They definitely need to improve their defense. And overall, it's just disappointing on how they couldn't even win one game. So against their game against the Houston Dynamo, they actually fell behind 1-0. And then the second half, they shut out the Dynamo, and they got a goal, and that was it. So that's pretty much the Diet Coke version, because obviously I'm not going to talk too much about the Galaxy. I think, obviously, not having Zlatan is kind of makes a big difference, but it's not just one player. It's like they need to revamp the defense and all that. So better luck next time, Galaxy. So as for LAFC, they actually placed second in their pool. They placed second in Group F. They tied to the Portland Timbers 2-2, which kind of was surprising. Another thing that was surprising in that tie with the Portland Timbers was that Diego Rossi was held off the scoreboard. So again, I couldn't believe it. So, and LAFC actually led 2-1, and that it's kind of the funny thing, because in their first game against Houston they trailed 3-1, In their second game against the Galaxy, it was tied 2-2 at halftime, and they were trailing 3-1 at halftime against the Dynamo. And then this time against the Portland Timbers, they were up 2-1, and I was like, this is interesting to say the least, because when LAFC trailed against Houston, they shut them out in the second half. Against the Galaxy, when they were tied at halftime, they shut them out in the second half and just straight up walked all over them. As for Portland, they didn't score any goals. They had their chances, and they looked solid offensively, but nothing was going in the goal. Like, nothing was going in, and then they gave up a goal. I think it was late in the game. Oh, I think it was in the 75th or 80th minute. I'm not gonna look at how the recap of the game, but they gave up a goal not in the late stages, but near the late stages of the game, over the halfway mark of the second half. And that, I was obviously tweeting out parts of the game, pretty much just live tweeting from the SoCal Supreme Sports Show Twitter account. So if you were following along, I definitely appreciate it. I kind of was thinking of doing a live call, but I think with opening day going on, I think that would have that pretty much kind of gets more love. So just my thing. So again, but back to LAFC, I was very surprised to see them just not score, and their star player Diego Rossi not get on the score sheet as well. So that kind of, it really, I wouldn't say it punched a hole in LAFC. I think it kind of woke them up to the point where they needed to realize that this isn't LAFC soccer. This isn't LAFC football. And it's disappointing for them, especially, because I think LAFC is so much better than that tie against the Portland Timbers. So the Portland Timbers wound up winning the pool, and they also managed to get I wouldn't say a first round bye, but they got a later game in this week in the knockout round, or the round of 16. The Portland Timbers beat Cincinnati in penalty kicks 4-2. The game was tied at 1-1 after regulation, so that's something. As for LAFC, they drew the Seattle Sounders in the first round of the MLS's back round of 16 tournament. And basically this tournament is win or go home. So if you all remember, LAFC lost to the Seattle Sounders in the playoffs last year. So this was kind of a great chance for LAFC to get some revenge, and they did. LAFC straight up left no doubt against the Seattle Sounders, winning 4-1 against the Sounders. Diego Rossi scored twice in that game. Diego Rossi did Diego Rossi things. Latif Blessing also scored. He's definitely been a bright spot in terms of assists as well. And Teran Rodriguez also added a late goal, which basically was the cherry on top. Will Bruin scored for the Sounders in the 75th minute. It was 2-0, and pretty much LAFC controlled all the momentum of the game. And then the Sounders got a goal back in that 75th minute thanks to Will Bruin. But unfortunately, that was pretty much that. Diego Rossi, 7 minutes later, scored to pretty much give them a nice little cushion. And like I said, Teran Rodriguez put the cherry on top. And that was pretty much that for LAFC. So good for LAFC, pretty much winning that game. And now they're on to the quarterfinals, where hopefully they don't choke. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, LAFC fans. So, interesting thing about Diego Rossi. Diego Rossi has scored 7 goals in the MLS's back tournament, and the San Jose Earthquakes are the only team other than LAFC to score more goals in the tournament than Rossi. So, Diego Rossi is just a one-man wrecking crew. It is absolutely ridiculous how good Diego Rossi is. He's a freaking magician. Like, it is absolutely amazing. Like, it's bananas, bonkers, crazy. So, if Diego Rossi is on his A game and he is doing magician-like things, LAFC is just a much more talented team. But you also have to look at all of the other, I wouldn't say like reserve players, but the other complementary players that LAFC has as well, like Latif Blessing. And then you also have Bradley Wright Phillips, who is second on the team in goals with 3 goals, even though he's only played 3 matches. Pablo Cisniega has been solid in goal. He has kind of gotten he's a little back and forth action. He's obviously been a little bit nervous, and he's had fans nervous. And considering he gave up 3 goals against the Dynamo, 2 goals against the Galaxy, and 2 goals against the Timbers. But I think he came into his own against the Sounders. So I think Pablo Cisniega is coming into his own, and he's definitely playing goalie well at the right time, because obviously playing goalie is no easy feat. You have to have a screw loose, and it's the most stressful position when it comes to like sports that have a goalie, whether it's field hockey, ice hockey, soccer, lacrosse, etc., etc. So it's good to see Pablo Cisniega stepping up his game in goal, and like I said, it's not just the Diego Rossi show. It's other players stepping up, like Latif Blessing. He leads the LAFC in assists with 4 assists. Francisco Ganella has 3 assists, and Brian Rodriguez has 3 assists as well. Rodriguez has also been a fine little asset for LAFC, so that's good for them, honestly. And I really think that LAFC has a good shot at winning this whole tournament. Now in their quarterfinal game, LAFC will play Orlando City SC. The last time these two teams met was September 7th, 2019, where the two teams tied 2-2, which was kind of surprising. As for total goals in the tournament, LAFC has scored 19, while Orlando has scored 8. As for giving up goals, LAFC has given up 11, while Orlando's given up 5. So I definitely think this is going to be LAFC's high-powered offense versus Orlando's solid, sound defense. And that's kind of what I also projected when LAFC played the Portland Timbers, because Portland is a pretty good defensive team, having not given up a whole lot of goals in the 2 matches they played prior to when they played LAFC. Like, they only gave up 1 goal to the Galaxy, which was in the second half. They only gave up 1 goal to the Houston Dynamo, which I think was also in the second half. And once their offense gets clicking, like, they don't stop. So as for LAFC, I think LAFC can win this matchup. I think LAFC has what it takes. I think Diego Rossi is back on his A game, and y'all thought I was going to say something else, but I'm not going to be that dirty. So Diego Rossi's back on his A game. He's definitely looks like a better, more improved version of himself. I think not getting on the scoreboard kind of motivated him, because he's obviously a great leader for LAFC. And he knows that he's a better, more talented player than what that game against the Timbers showed. And he showed it against the Seattle Sounders. But Orlando is going to be another challenge. Orlando is definitely good because they haven't given up. All their opponents have scored no more than 1 goal. Like, their first game when they beat Miami in group play, they won 2-1. Then they beat NYC FC, New York City FC, 3-1. Then they tied with Philadelphia 1-1, and then they beat Montreal 1-0. So overall, it's going to come down to which team blinks first. Obviously, that sounds cliche, but it all depends on if Orlando can get the stops, and they pretty much slow down all of LAFC's hot players. Slowing down Diego Rossi is definitely going to be a must, but can they? Can they slow down Diego Rossi? Or is Diego Rossi just too much for them? Like, Diego is just such a freaking powerhouse. It's just, you can't say enough good about him, man. I swear. So, that's just me. And I think it's going to be a great game. I'm excited for that game. I think those two are going to play their hearts out. And I think, again, it's going to come down to whether Orlando's defense comes through or whether LAFC's offense can get hot from the field. Either way, if you're a fan of soccer or you just like Southern California sports in general, definitely check out LAFC versus Orlando. Unfortunately, they're not going to be on like ESPN and whatnot. They're going to be on FS1, Unimas, TSN, TV, AS2. The quarterfinal game between Orlando and LAFC is going to be on July 31st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which is going to be a 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time start if you're on the West Coast. Again, I'm looking forward to that game. I'm definitely going to try to live tweet that game, especially since LAFC is the only local team that's vying to win a championship. I'm excited for it. I definitely think it's going to be a great matchup, and it's going to pit one of the better defenses in the MLS against one of the better high-powered offenses in the MLS. So, and also Orlando's kind of got the home field advantage, though I don't think that's going to be too big of a deal. So, and Orlando's head coach Oscar Pareja has done an excellent job. So, I definitely think it's going to be an exciting matchup. Bob Bradley has also done an amazing job. So, we'll see how it goes. We'll see. So, Orlando has not beaten LAFC. LAFC has won one time, and they've drawn one time. So LAFC has 1-0, 1-0, and 1 against Orlando City. LAFC has scored 6 goals, while Orlando City has scored 3 goals overall. And like I said, there's been 1 draw. So I got to go with LAFC. I think LAFC gets the dub. I think they're going to finally crack Orlando's defense. I'm going to say LAFC wins 2-1. I definitely think Diego Rossi will get on the scoreboard. I think he'll be the one that puts it away, especially when LAFC is on a fast break. I think when LAFC is on fast break and they're pretty much just in a momentum and in their zone, I think that's when LAFC is most dangerous, and especially when they have Diego Rossi wide open. So it's definitely going to be an exciting matchup between those two teams. That's pretty much going to do it for the MLS portion of this show. I may not be the biggest MLS buff, but I'm getting more into this. I think with this whole COVID thing, I think soccer is definitely growing, not just in MLS, but NWSL. Big shout to the Houston Dash for winning the NWSL championship. Liga MX, La Liga, and all those other soccer leagues are continuing to grow, especially with this, with the shutdown of sports being a big thing, and pretty much they were one of the few sports that came back first, along with NASCAR and UFC and all those other motorsports. So, definitely try to check out the LAFC Orlando City SC matchup. So that's going to conclude it. That's going to conclude my little segment for the MLS portion. Let's jump into some baseball action. The San Diego Padres, yes, they are a SoCal team. That San Diego is SoCal. Don't you dare try to argue with me. So, and we have someone else in the chat room. We have Matt Hames. He says, "What up?" Hey, Matt. Great to have you in the chat room. And Matt Hames is a big Utah Jazz fan. And going back to a little bit of NBA, I'll talk a little little bit more briefly about the NBA. Matt Hames, I think your Utah Jazz can pose a threat to I think they could pose a threat to the Lakers. It all depends. I think the Jazz have a solid team, but that matchup against the Thunder can go either way, especially since those two teams are in the same division. So I definitely would not want to be seeing the Jazz. So, oh, Matt says the Jazz are screwed without Bogey. Okay, maybe not. So I'd like to see the Jazz maybe beat the Clippers. Who knows? So I forgot that Bogey is out for the Jazz. So my bad, Matt. But still, I still think the Jazz are a little underrated. So, and hopefully all their team synergy is back to being. Hopefully they can get their team synergy together. They're going to need as much of it as possible because they've already got a pretty good matchup, and it's a national televised matchup against the Pelicans. The Pelicans are also pretty good as well. They're not top 8 as of right now, but they're pretty much are going to like muscle their way in, especially with Zion Williamson. Like Zion's a big boy. So that's just my little brief on the NBA. Honestly, I still think it's going to come down to the Lakers and the Clippers. I'm sorry, Matt, but I just think that it's going to be Lakers-Clippers. And if it's not Lakers-Clippers, I'll be disappointed. And then, yeah, Bojan Bogdanovic is out for the year. And he says that the Jazz are trying to avoid the Houston Rockets in the first round. I said that the Houston Rockets were a high school team. But I think the Jazz can get past the Rockets. Unless the Jazz don't have height on their team, they're facing a team full of Oompa Loompas. Yes, I said it. The Rockets have a team full of Oompa Loompas. They don't have a whole lot of height on their team. So I said the Rockets had a high school basketball team, but they have a team full of Oompa Loompas. They don't have height. I'm sorry. It's the truth. So, Rockets fans, I'm sorry, but name me one player that's like taller than 6'7". I'll wait. Anyway, back to some MLB action. Padres, Angels, and Dodgers opened up their season last week. The Dodgers split their series against the San Francisco Giants, which kind of surprised me. They were And Matt Hames talks about the Houston Rockets. He says they are a high school team, but they can pull Rudy out of the paint because they're playing with all those shooters. And then Westbrook drives it in after Gobert is out of the paint. That's also true. Like, despite the Rockets giving up height, they do have some athleticism. And if they get hot from three, like with James Harden and Russell Westbrook, that kind of makes Houston a hot and dangerous team, but I still think the Rockets aren't really the team I'd ride home with. I'd take the Jazz before I'd take the Rockets, in my opinion. But that's just my take. If you agree, then I totally respect it. So anyway, to baseball, the Dodgers kind of disappointed me last week with their split of the Giants. They dominated the Giants in the first two games, and then the next two games they didn't look like themselves, which is very disappointing, honestly. I honestly thought the Dodgers were going to take 3 of 4, which it really had a lot of Dodgers fans irate, saying that the Dodgers only won 2 games against a lowly Giants team. Nothing against the Giants, but honestly, I think the Giants aren't that good. I think the Dodgers are light years ahead of the Giants. So, to me, I think the Dodgers really disappointed me last week, losing the last 2 games. The first 2 games, obviously, they looked really good, but I think their pitching woes were starting to become exposed, which is disappointing. They have another tough series that's going on right now against the Houston Astros, and that, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. But overall, I was pretty disappointed with how the Dodgers performed last week. I wasn't as disappointed in the Dodgers as I was in the Angels. Oh my God, I was so disappointed in the Angels. Would you like to know why? First game, Angels, Oakland A's. First and foremost, I know the Oakland A's are good. They have a really good team with like Matt Olson being one of their players. He's a Gold Glover and all that. But I definitely think the Angels could have taken at least 2, if not 3, against the A's. So, first game of the series between Angels and A's, that game went 10, and unfortunately the Angels lost 7-3. They lost off of a grand slam. Man, they lost off of a grand slam, which is very, very, very disappointed. Matt Olson was the one that had the grand slam, and they also have Geraldus Chapman and Ramon Laura. I'm butchering his last name. Lano, and then Matt Simeon, and overall, I'm willing to acknowledge those players, and big shout to Marcus Looks Great saying, "Oh snap, you know I had to pop in." Hey, big shout to you, Marcus. Thanks for joining in the chat room. Great show yesterday with Gloves Off. You never disappoint. And sorry y'all, I'm messing up. And Marcus says, "What's up, Mr. Teran Rodriguez?" So hey, what's up, Marcus? Great to have you on. Great to have you in the chat room. So anyway, back to baseball time. Angels lost to the Oakland A's 7-3 off of a grand slam from Matt Olson. I definitely think the Angels had so many opportunities. They had the bases loaded 3 times in that game against the A's, and they came away empty on all 3 of those opportunities. It's so disappointing because I definitely think, again, I think the Angels were so much better, and none of their players could really hit the ball. Like I think all their players. Here's the weird fact of the day. All of the Angels players had no more than 1 hit, which is very surprising, especially with a team full of talented hitters such as Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, David Fletcher, Andrelton Simmons. Like they could not hit the ball for nothing. So I couldn't believe it. So Marcus says, should the Dodgers wait outside the arena for the Angels? Har har, Marcus. Har har. To me, I think the Dodgers are just light years ahead of the Angels. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. So they definitely have a much better chance at winning the World Series than the Angels do. I mean, I want Mike Trout to win a World Series, but if this keeps up, he could be the Dan Fouts of the MLB. I'm sorry, but it's kind of the truth. So anyway, Angels won the second game, which they played so much better. And Dylan Bundy was definitely a bright spot. That was pretty much the Garrett Cole, the sweepstakes for the Angels. The Angels won Garrett Cole. Instead, they got Dylan Bundy, which was disappointing on their part. Disappointing for all Angels fans. But they got him for cheap, which that's definitely a plus. They got him along with Anthony Rendon and a few other key pieces as well. So Dylan Bundy looked really good, honestly. So hats off to Dylan Bundy. A pitcher who did not look good for the Angels was Shohei Ohtani. His first game back pitching after he had Tommy John surgery, he couldn't even get a single out. I'm sorry, but I kind of feel like Shohei got rushed back too quickly. It was just a disappointing day for him. Like, the first inning, if he had a mulligan and a half, if he had like a 10 mulligans, he'd definitely want to use like a bunch of those. So Shohei really disappointed when it came to pitching. And the funny thing is that I told everyone that I want Shohei to continue to pitch. Maybe I should rethink that? But it is his first game back, so I won't bash him too much. But still, it is a little disappointing. So, and then the last game of the series between the Angels and the Oakland A's was also disappointing because the Angels couldn't even get squat on the board, and they had plenty of runners in scoring position. I think overall in that series they were like 1 for 8 or 1 for 7 when it came to scores and runners in scoring position, and they just couldn't take advantage of it. And that's a very disappointing aspect if you're the Angels, because you're playing in a division, an overall division with a lot of great teams, and you're also playing in the AL West, home of the Astros, the Oakland A's, which are really good. The Seattle Mariners are not that good, and the Texas Rangers are So, to me, I think the Angels are basically third banana at best, if not second banana. But overall, that series was frustrating for Angels fans. I mean, I like both the Angels and the Dodgers, but I think the Angels just had the worst opening day series last week, which I know they didn't have Anthony Rendon, but still, I think they could have done so much better. It's all about it's all about hitting the ball and just getting on base. I know it's easier said than done with how great of a pitching core that the Oakland A's have, but still, it's just so disappointing to see the Angels just come up short like that. Like, all 3 of those games were winnable. So they obviously disappointed me, but we'll see. We'll see how they rebound. Obviously, this year is a marathon, or no, it's a sprint and not a marathon. And pretty much those 3 games kind of set them back. They still have the possibility of going 57-3. No, it's not. That's not going to happen. If that ever happens, then God help me. So anyway, the last team from Southern California, who actually looked solid in their series debut, was the San Diego Padres, as they looked really good against the Arizona Diamondbacks, which it's promising to see. It's very promising to see that the Padres have a good team, especially with how the San Diego is long yearning for a really good team and for a championship. So Padres beat the Diamondbacks 5-1 the first game. They barely lost to the Diamondbacks 4-3, and they beat the Diamondbacks 6-2. And then yesterday they beat the Giants 5-3. Tonight they play the Giants in the second game. The game is at San Francisco. It's basically SoCal versus NorCal, SoCal versus NoCal. So here's hoping the Padres can continue their hot streak. And I definitely think the Padres are a team to watch for. I think they're the dark horse in the NL West. Do I think they can win the NL West? No, I don't. Do I think they can at least challenge the Dodgers? Of all the teams of the NL West, I definitely think they can. So we'll see. We'll see how the Padres can handle it. After the Padres play the Giants, they play the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies have been off to a pretty hot start. The Rockies just swept the Oakland A's, and then they looked even better in their in their series opener against the Texas Rangers. It's funny because they played the Texas Rangers in summer camp, so pretty much the Colorado Rockies were pretty much just chilling in the state of Texas. So Marcus says maybe when it comes to I'm pretty sure he says to the San Diego Padres challenging the Dodgers. I definitely think they can. They have the pitching. And Marcus, that's cold, dude. Marcus says the Diamondbacks will be trash. I hate to say it, but you're kind of right. As Stephen A. Smith would say, come on, let's be nice. Let's be nice. You don't have to go there. I mean, you're not wrong, but you didn't have to say it. I mean, good lord. And also, the Rockies lost their first game to the Texas Rangers. They only lost 1-0, which... nice little soccer score. But ever since that 1-0 loss to the Rangers, the Colorado Rockies have won their next 4 games. And then their game against the Padres is going to be really good. That's going to be a good test for the Padres. And I think that game will be for first place in the NL West. I didn't think I'd be hearing myself say those words. The Colorado Rockies in first place in the NL West. Obviously, it's still early. But Marcus says they haven't been the same since Colangelo sold the team. You're not wrong about that one, Marcus. Unfortunately, oh, poor Diamondbacks, But those Rockies are pretty solid to start off, and I honestly can't believe it, especially in an extended playoff format. So if they can get hot, we could see them possibly doing some damage, but I wouldn't put it past them. Like, even though it's still early in the season, and even though this is a shortened season, I don't think the Rockies will be able to touch the Dodgers. And I honestly think the Padres will have a better time against the Rockies. Obviously, with what's been going on in the MLB has been a little concerning with the Miami Marlins. I'm sorry. Yes, I took a page out of Ben Sutterth's book. The Miami COVIDs, not the Miami Marlins. No offense, Miami fans and Marlins fans, if you haven't jumped off the bandwagon. But obviously with what happened with the Miami Marlins players in terms of a bunch of their players and staff members getting COVID. Obviously, it's concerning. This kind of begs me the question. Are the Miami Marlins eliminated from playoff contention? But, again, this isn't really the Miami sports show. This is the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, but it is kind of funny that everything in Florida has pretty much hurt everything in the whole world. And it's sad, honestly. So, overall, hopefully everything turns out well for the Miami Marlins. Okay, I'll stop with that joke, honestly. Yeah. And Marcus says, my boy Derek Jeter is having a hell of a time in Florida. Well, he better not be getting that Rona, because the Rona doesn't care who you are or where you're from. So, that Rona is out to get everyone. So, like I said, everybody, be safe. Be safe and just don't get exposed to that Rona, because the Rona doesn't care who you are or where you're from. Like, anyone can get the Rona. And it's scary. Like, it's a big deal. So people in Florida, stay safe. Stay safe. One thing in the MLB that I'll note is that no team is winless. So unfortunately, we will not see a team go 0-60, which is kind of sad. We were all hoping that the Red Sox would go 0-60. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Yes, I said it. We will not be seeing the Boston Red Sox go 0-60 this year in the shortened season. Darn Orioles, why'd you have to break our hearts? I'm kidding. So, anyway, that's pretty much going to wrap... Oh, no. We're not going to wrap it up when it comes to the MLB just yet. We got to talk about Joe Kelly and what happened yesterday with the... Houston Astros. By the way, go check out Bases Loaded on IE Sports Radio. Definitely a great show to tune into. Baseball show with Brandon Buckingham and Blake Henley. Those two really know their sports. They know their sports, and they definitely know their baseball. So, anyway, as for Joe Kelly got slapped with an 8-game suspension from Rob Manfred. Honestly, I don't agree with that. It's just some friendly banter. It's friendly banter. Obviously, it's supposed to be a heated rivalry between the Astros and the Dodgers. And for goodness sakes, everybody, just let it go. Let it go. Move on. What happened happened. The Astros cheated. The Yankees cheated, and then they lost. Sorry to all you Yankees fans. Don't take it personally. But the Astros cheated, and they won. So just move on with it. And I agree, Marcus. Joe shouldn't have been suspended. Come on now. Come on, man. It's honestly disappointing that he got in trouble for mouthing off and causing both benches to clear. It's Joe Kelly is a fiery competitor. He's a former Red Sox and he's a former Padre. Well, the Padre part isn't all that important, but he's a former Red Sox. He doesn't shy away from anybody. So cheated Yankees, never. We would never cheat. Yeah, I'm yanking your chain, Marcus. I'm sorry, but yeah, but the Astros did cheat, and that's kind of that. It's all water under the bridge now. Let's all just move on from this whole thing. So anyway, Joe Kelly shouldn't have gotten suspended, it's disappointing that he got 8 games. That's way too extreme. Maybe 1 game or a big fine would have been something, but 8-game suspension just because he was mouthing? Come on. It's it's friendly banter. It's a fiery rivalry. It's come on, Rob Manfred, you disappointed me. I was very disappointed that he got suspended. So overall, I think it's just a bummer that he got suspended just because he was mouthing off and just because he was trying to get in the head of one of the Astros players. So, come on, MLB. Shorten his suspension or just take away his suspension overall. Or just slap him with a big fine. Come on, man. Just take away his dessert privileges and just let it be. So, anyway, it is disappointing that he got suspended, but it just goes to show you that the MLB is kind of soft. I'm just kidding. No, that's not true. That's not true. It just goes to show that Rob Manfred doesn't know a whole lot. It's disappointing. I'm not trying to bash him, and these are the opinions and thoughts of myself, Teran Rodriguez. So, and just in case the fun police is watching. So anyway, I just think it's bad that Joe Kelly got suspended. What are you doing, Rob Manfred? I won't go too much in depth in regards to his suspension. I mean, just because he was trying to stir the pot, leave him be. Free Joe Kelly. # free Joe Kelly. I don't care what anyone says. I'm going to be getting that trending. So, yeah. So, overall, I think that's going to conclude the MLB portion. I was impressed with the Dodgers' win last night against the Astros. I guess I could also be impressed with the Angels win over the Mariners, but it's just the Mariners. Who cares if they beat the Mariners? If they don't take 2 out of 3 against the Mariners, they are so screwed against the Astros this coming weekend. And then the Padres really impressed me by sweeping the Oakland A's. I'm really looking forward to their game, their series against the Colorado Rockies. I can't believe that's actually for first place. I don't think anyone would have reiterated that sentence. I know it's only 5 games in for both teams, but still. Impressive. Impressive, yes. Yes, very indeed. Very indubitably. So that's going to do it for the MLB portion. Just got a couple more segments, and then I'm going to send you all on your way. So Joey Bosa of the Los Angeles Chargers got a 6-year, I think it's 102 contract extension. And oh boy, and I'm probably going to be hearing from this from Marcus in the chat room because he's a San Francisco 49ers fan. So, and the San Francisco 49ers have Joey Bosa's little brother, Nick Bosa. So, So yeah, it was a big contract deal. I think it was like It was a 5-year, $135 million extension. Ugh, I wasn't even close. My bad, y'all. So yeah, 5-year, $135 million extension, and the $102 million guaranteed is a new NFL record for when it comes to defensive players. I was very surprised to see the Chargers get a deal done with Joey Bosa, especially with how Bosa held out his rookie season. So that's quite fascinating, and I would think that Joey Bosa would have had the incentive of possibly leaving the Chargers and maybe going to San Francisco to join up with his brother Nick. Just food for thought, honestly, but the fact that the Chargers inked him to a extension that big is quite amazing. And obviously they had to take some pay cuts with not bringing back Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon and franchise tagging Hunter Henry. But to have Joey Bosa is quite an amazing feat for their defense. Still, the Chargers, does Joey Bosa make the Chargers a Super Bowl contender? No, it clearly doesn't. The Chargers are still lacking in a bunch of other areas, and I just don't think Super Bowl is in the cards for the Chargers this year. So we'll see how it goes, though. I mean, I think the Chargers are much better than everyone says they are. Everyone's thinking they're going to go 3-13. I think they're slightly better than 3-13. At least I should at least expect them to get to 6 wins at the minimum. That's just me. Maybe I'm just being too much of a Chargers homer, but that's just me. So that's my little brief news on the NFL regarding the Southern California teams. I didn't hear too much big news from the Rams, but if anyone has any objections, then feel free to let me know in the chat room. But other than that, we're going to move on to our final portion of the show, being the Big West Conference. The Big West Conference announced that they will be postponing all fall sports throughout the calendar year, meaning no fall sports, no men's water polo, no men's soccer, no women's soccer, no cross country, no volleyball for my show set point. It's a big bummer because I am a Cal State Long Beach or Long Beach State student, and not having fall sports really sucks. If they had just held off and like moved it to a later date, maybe I would have understood. But I mean, I clearly understand why they postponed it altogether throughout the whole calendar year, because obviously it's not safe. Like, California has had a lot of COVID cases, so I don't think it would be wise to have all the fall sports come back right away. Basketball, which is played in the winter, is still on. Basketball, I think, is going to start in November. So when it comes to men's and women's basketball in the Big West Conference. So overall, it's just a bummer, and I feel bad for the athletes, but it's for the greater good. So my little food for thought on the Big West canceling its conference game, its overall seasons for the fall is this: what's going to happen to the players? Are they going to get like redshirt years, like for like seniors? Are they going to get redshirt years and redshirt seniors? Are they going to want to continue to stay with the team for next year, or are they going to want to move on with their lives and all that? So, and then the freshmen, the incoming freshmen, also have to have food for thought as well. So, will they have to take redshirt years, or obviously they would, but it all depends on if they want to play professionally. And Marcus says sports does not equal more exposure to COVID. We have to stop selling this false narrative. I agree, Marcus. I definitely agree, and I'm going to give you a little bit of applause for that. I definitely agree with that. And then Marcus says they could get COVID going to the grocery store or getting gas. Facts, Marcus. And that's why you actually touch upon something that I have to put up with every day. I work at a grocery store, and I'm forced to wear a mask. So and we're pretty much enforcing customers to wearing masks as well. I'm not trying to make this the Teran show, but it's just a little. Marcus did touch upon a pretty solid subject as well, so I definitely agree with Marcus in that aspect of sports does not equal more exposure to COVID, and we have to stop selling this false narrative. And one thing I definitely agree with, and one thing I also have to mention, I think when it comes to like volleyball, where it's hardly a physical contact sport, I think that volleyball should be there to stay. Now, I am biased when it comes to volleyball because I obviously host a volleyball show, but when it comes to volleyball, there's no physical contact. Like there's like little to no physical contact. And obviously, maybe they'll have like they'll maybe have like barriers when it comes to the ball getting hit out or off the block and so that it doesn't go into the crowd. They should just have at least limited capacity when it comes to volleyball. So I don't know. Again, I'm a volleyball fan, so I'm a little biased, but I think volleyball should actually stay. And then Marcus says volleyball is also the greatest sport known to man. Facts, Marcus. Facts, Marcus. So yeah, I just don't. It just kind of, and I obviously know the reason why, but I just feel bad for the athletes for the Big West. And the Big West joins 3 other conferences that canceled their sports season as well, or their fall season as well. Spring season is still a possibility for the Big West Conference, meaning men's volleyball is on, women's water polo, tennis. And then, like I said, basketball is still on, possibly. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Big West Conference. It just sucks that fall sports had to get canceled. But it is what it is. I mean, I can't do anything. I mean, unless, of course, the Big West Conference gets a change of heart before the season starts. But certain sports seasons will be probably starting pretty soon, like water polo and volleyball, like I said, and soccer, and I'll hopefully be talking more college soccer. I'll try to touch more upon the college sports when the college sports start, but as of right now, there's no college sports to talk about other than like college news, and obviously I'm going to be talking about the college teams from the Southern California, so that's just me. If there is something else that's significant in the college sports world, I mean, they did have one player opt out when it comes to college football. I think he was from like West Virginia or something like that. I think it was like one of the top players in the nation or something. I'm not sure, but one college football player did opt out because of all the opting outs from the NFL. So that's just some more food for thought, in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see. And then also the 3C2A. I think I already said this, but the California Community College Athletic Association has pushed back its fall sports to the spring. Basically, there's going to be an early spring sports session with like football, women's volleyball, I think maybe basketball, and a few other sports as well. And then late spring is going to be like men's volleyball, baseball, softball, track and field, tennis, stuff like that. So beach volleyball, the list goes on and on. So I don't know if I said that the California Community College Athletic Association was going to push all the fall sports back to spring, but there it is. And I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. But before we go, we're pretty much going to bring it on home. Pretty much going to recap everything that's been going on with iSports Radio. iSports Radio is still going strong. Sunday we had Davidson Crooks and Darius Locke talk basketball on their show Fast Break. Like I said, they do an excellent job with that show. On Monday we had the Phils, Phil Jones and Phil Robinson, do their thing with The Unfiltered Truth. On Tuesday we had my show, Set Point, with me talking some volleyball action, and I had Dave Huber, the head girls volleyball coach at Los Alamitos High School. And I also talked some AVP as well. And then yesterday we also had Marcus Losgreat, who I definitely appreciate you interacting with me in the chat room, saying who had his show Gloves Off. He talked Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. and all combat sports known to man. So he did a great job with that. And then today obviously was SoCal Supreme Sports Show. And then tomorrow, which is Thursday, I believe we have the Deep Stage going live tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time with Jonathan Grunke and Larry B. Thanks, Marcus. I definitely appreciate you saying that. You said, you're my boy, Tan. Definitely appreciate talking with some UFC and other combat sports with you. I know I'm not really the most knowledgeable fight sports fan, but I'm glad to talk it with you. And hey, great to have you in the chat room as well, Mike Pat. And Marcus says, great show. Definitely appreciate you, man. So anyway, back to the whole iSports Radio recap. We might have Jonathan Grunke and Larry B going live with the Deep Stage tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. They'll be talking NHRA. And then at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the Extra Mile with Dale Kinsey Jr. and Michael Ward. Those two will be talking motorsports such as NASCAR, IndyCar, NHRA, you name it. And then also tomorrow we have Bases Loaded with Brandon Buckingham and Blake Henley. Those two will be talking baseball. They'll be talking baseball and MLB. They'll be going live at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Friday, we have the Neutral Zone with Robert Kavanaugh, which will be talking about the NHL and hockey as the COVID Cup, as Robert pretty much talks about the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. That's going to be going live at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Saturday, we have Down in H-Town with Corey Walker. I believe that starts at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, if not 5 p.m. Pacific Time. And that's going to be a 6 p.m. Central Time start, or 7 p.m. Central Time if he goes live at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Mr. Corey Walker will be talking all things sports in Houston, Texas, such as the Houston Dash, which won the NWSL championship. And then he'll also be talking about the Houston Astros and the Houston Texans and the Houston Rockets and whatnot. So definitely check out that show. Sorry, y'all. And definitely check out iSports Radio's website. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spreaker. Definitely follow us on TuneIn and Spotify and Mixlr and all things, all of our platforms. And definitely check out the iSports Radio website, where we have, and sign up for our little blog, and check out our merchandise, and check out for our weekly newsletter, and check out pretty much our articles that Mr. Mike Pat, who, like I said, jumped in the chat room and was kind enough to say hello. Definitely great to have you in the chat room, Mike Pat. So thanks for tuning in, Mike. And definitely continue to support iSports Radio, because we're not going to stop. The iSports Radio train is going to keep on chugging along. And on that note, it's time to chug on out of here, because it's pretty much dinner time. So like I said, this is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, signing off from another episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. And thank you, Mike Pat. I'm glad you are happy to be here in the chat room. Thank you all for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. My name is Teran Rodriguez. You have yourselves a great night. I will see you next Tuesday for Set Point. I will also see you next week for another episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Have a great rest of the night. Remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Good night, everybody.